Hello, everybody. Welcome to session 3 of our GOTV training for Spain. It's super exciting to see new faces on this call and so much of Spanish geography covered. We are recording this session for people who are unable to be here today. If you don't want to be on the recording, you can turn your camera off. I'm going to turn this over now to Heidi Birch, who is the Global GOTV Coordinator and the brains behind the wonderful website that we all use, VoteFromAbroad.org. Thanks for
Thanks,
coming today,
Annie.
Heidi.
Thanks, Annie. Um, Thanks for the introduction. As Annie said, my name is Heidi Birch, and I am the Global GOTV Coordinator, and I'm also responsible for keeping Vote From Abroad updated and going, and I'm the Voting Assistance Coordinator. Basically, I want to get ballots in boxes. That's all I care about, and I want to help voters do it. So I'm spreading the word with you all here today. Um, as it says on my thing there, I live outside of Toronto and I vote in California. I started working, volunteering with Democrats Abroad back in 2012 when someone said, "Do you want to help get Obama reelected?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. How?" Found out, and I've been doing global GOTV since about 2016. So what I'm going to do today is two trainings in one, which is why this is 2 hours. The first part is going to be all about how to help voters register to vote and request their ballots as overseas voters. And to do that, I'm going to go through Vote From Abroad and how to fill it out and some of its quirks. And then we'll do questions and answers after that because this is a big group, so I won't be able to take questions during the presentation. But please put them in the chat. Annie can hopefully monitor and set up a queue. And you may actually get your answer during the presentation anyhow. And then after that, I'll do the second part, which is helping voters who are having problems getting their ballot or need help returning their ballot. So bear with me. And again, I hope I don't have any tech issues, but I'm going to share my screen now for the presentation. Let me put this in slideshow mode. Okay, hopefully everyone is seeing Vote From Abroad, registering and requesting an overseas absentee ballot. Like I said, we're going to go through the steps that you can help voters fill out an FPCA form and get their overseas ballot. I do want to emphasize that you are not expected to be an expert after this. This is to give you guys a grounding so that you can then help at events and work with more experienced volunteers to get very comfortable, we hope. So after this training, you will be able to help overseas voters fill out their form and get it submitted. And then also help them confirm that they will receive a ballot when they become available. As overseas voters, we have to plan ahead. We can't just show up at the polls. So the earlier we can get someone situated, the better. Now this is, like I said, it's going to focus on filling out the FPCA form, and it's a first level training so that you can understand the issues but also know when to get support from more experienced volunteers. What can you do after you've got this training? In-person events is going to be a big go-to, particularly at this time of the year, starting in January. There will be events in your local area that you can participate in. We also do what we call Zoom rooms, which are going into Zoom and doing one-to-one support online with people who we can't see in person. You would be more than welcome to come to those and shadow a more experienced volunteer so you can see the issues that come up. And then after you've had some experience, we do have a voter help desk where we respond to voter queries. It's also known as Intercom. We like to have people have a little bit of experience before they go on there, but come September, that's when we get huge numbers of people asking questions and needing help. So the help is that you'll get the experience in the ensuing months and ready to hit the ground running when the big numbers come. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the basic training slide deck that got sent out with the reminder. But the main thing that I wanted to point out for you all to remember are some acronyms. You're going to see them a lot. ULACAVA is the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. That is the federal law that governs our rights to vote as overseas voters. And you're going to see, and as we go through this training, that ULACAVA sets ground rules, but anything that's not covered in ULACAVA, it's the state law. And we are dealing with 50 different states, plus DC and the 5 territories. So there are a lot of, this is the rule, here's how it's implemented. And Vote From Abroad is there to kind of guide you through all those quirks and differences. One thing that ULACAVA does is it set up the Federal Postcard Application, the FPCA. That is a one-page form that every overseas voter can use to register to vote and to request their ballot. Every state must accept it. And that is the form that you're filling out when you're going through Vote From Abroad. And we'll talk about why it's important to use that form. Now, as I said, the states administer elections, and they have the ground rules in ULACAVA, but beyond that, the state rules apply. And the state official who processes the FPCA form is the local election official. LEO is what you're going to hear a ton. They are the only ones who can add a voter to the voter rolls and can send out a ballot. It's typically a county clerk, but it can be in some states a municipal clerk, like the town or village. We do tend to work with them a lot, and even in red states, the LEOs tend to want to help people vote. But you have to keep in mind, we're unusual. Being overseas voters is not typical, and they do make mistakes a lot, and we just politely, hopefully, point those out. And then finally, VFA is Vote From Abroad. That is the website that we're going to be focusing on when we're helping voters register and request their ballots. So as I said, we have to start early because we can't just show up at the polls. And the steps to successfully voting from abroad is you fill out that FPCA form. You make sure the LEO received it. It's very important to confirm it. Then you'll get your ballot. Starting 45 days before Election Day is when ballots must start going out. We try to get people to do their FPCA before that 45 days so they have as much time as possible to fill out their ballots and get it back by the deadline. And then once again, once they've returned their ballot, it's always important to confirm that it was received and will be accepted. Now, we focus a lot on ULACAVA and filling out the FPCA form because you get very specific protections that you don't get as an in-state voter, even if you're getting an absentee ballot. Getting your ballot sent to you by email is hugely important for most overseas voters. And that 45 days is an extra 2 weeks. Most absentee ballots go out 30 days or even fewer. It covers you for the entire calendar year at a minimum. Some states give you even more time, but you don't have to keep sending in your ballot request forms. If you don't get your ballot in time, you are able to use the backup ballot. It's the official name is the Federal Write-in Absentee Ballot, and you'll hear FWAB a lot. I prefer to use backup ballot because it makes sense to a voter. They really don't need another acronym in their life. And then you may have an extended deadline or even the ability to return your ballot electronically, which is also, again, hugely important for overseas voters. And talking about the form, that is what it looks like. You have to use the form to get those protections, but it is a multi-purpose form. It will register you to vote if you're not already registered. It will request your ballots for the calendar year. And you can also use it if you ever need to update your information. So you can send it in multiple times a year if you need to. It's not like you've done it and can't change anything ever. Keep in mind that some people are confused about, they're like, well, I'm registered. It's like, yes, but a lot of states still require you to request that ballot. They want to make sure you're still an overseas voter. They're nervous about sending out ballots indiscriminately. For some states, it's every year. Even if you're registered, you still have to send in that same FPCA form to request your ballot. Other states are much more lenient, but we tend to go towards, what's the minimum requirement so that nobody is without a ballot.
No.
So this is what Vote from Abroad looks like. We like to think it's the easiest way for a voter to fill out that FPCA form and get the help they need to actually get their ballot. Want to point out that Vote from Abroad is run by Democrats Abroad. All of the volunteers on there are DA members, DA volunteers. But the site is nonpartisan in the sense that you don't have to be a Democrat, you don't have to be a DA member to use it. Anybody can use it regardless of political affiliation. But keep in mind, if you're at a DA event, DA events can use Vote from Abroad in a partisan way. If you're just out there as Vote from Abroad, you can't restrict it just to Democrats. It's a little confusing, but when you're at a voter event, the people who set it up will make sure you're following the rules. But like I said, you can't refuse to help someone who's a Republican, for example, if you're at a general Vote from Abroad event. So why use Vote from Abroad? The reason we really encourage people to use it is that it tailors the journey for the voter. It makes sure that all of the requirements that are specific to them are set out for them. It can depend on what state they vote in, what voter category they're in, whether they're already registered or not. And we try to shepherd them through as easily as possible. It also fills out the form legibly, which can be a real problem for filling out the form by hand. If a Leo can't read your email address correctly, they can't get in touch with you. They can't send you your ballot. We provide the online voter help desk, which I mentioned that as you get experience, you'd be more than welcome to join us on there answering people's questions. And I will show you that there is a way where you can sign the form and send it directly to your election office without having to print, and that saves a ton of time and effort on the voter's part. The things that are unique to Vote from Abroad is the full website is available in Spanish. You can toggle every page. And then we have the option to request an appointment on Zoom to give people one-to-one support in addition to them emailing us. And the thing we like about it is that they can join DA. They're not required to by any means, but the option is there. And we do get a lot of members that way, or we have members update with us. Sure. Now there are two different versions of Vote from Abroad. There's the students version, which you guys may have heard of already. And we set that up to use for voter events that take place like on college campuses and that type of thing, and other places where they want it to be as nonpartisan as possible. And some places objected to us asking if they want to join Democrats Abroad. So this version, the students version, does not have the question, do you want to join DA? So it's a good one to use in those types of places. And it's also good because a lot of students are only abroad for a year or less, and we want them to get their ballots, but there's no need for them to join DA if they're just heading back to the US. The other version, which is what I'm going to be focusing on today, is the sandbox version. That is, it's got this big red banner saying it's a development testing site. It mirrors regular vote from abroad, but you can go in and play around, and it will not send the form to the Leo, even if you say send email, and it will not change your DA membership profile. So if you put in there that, if you normally vote in Wisconsin and you play around with saying I'm a Delaware voter, it won't update you to say you're a Delaware voter, which can happen on the regular Vote From Abroad website. So now I'm going to switch over and see if I can't go to, this is the Sandbox website. As you can see, it's got this big banner at the top that lets you know that you're not on regular Vote From Abroad, and it's at the bottom as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this live website to show you what it can do. And there are slides that give you static shots of this, but I figured it'd be better to do it live. So on Vote From Abroad, we have point out the stuff that we have there to help you as a volunteer, as well as voters, find out information. We have up at the top your state rules. If you click on that, it goes to each state has its own page, which is state-specific rules. And let me see if I can go to one. This is what the Florida page looks like, for example. So at the top of the page, it will have the election deadlines for the next coming elections in that year. Florida is one of the few states that still has an election coming up, so I've used them. So it's a good way to look at what the deadlines are if you're talking to a Florida voter. It also has how to send in the form to register, to request a ballot, to return a ballot. You'll see that Florida has different rules. If you're registering, you have to do it by mail, or you can use their online registration system if you have a state ID. But if you're already registered and you're requesting your ballot for the year, you can actually send it in by email. And then Florida will let you return a ballot by fax or mail. So those are always good things to check. A lot of this information will be pulled into Vote From Abroad as the person's going through the form as well, but this is a good place if you don't want to have to go through the form. We also talk about the type of ballot that they're going to get based on their voter category. And I'll talk about that more when we're going through the form. What category the voter chooses, and it's up to the voter to choose their category, can make a difference what ballot they receive, whether they'll get the state elections as well as federal. If you're telling a voter that they should contact their Leo, or you want to contact the Leo, this is where you would find the information. You can click here and pull up the contact information for Baker County or for whatever. It'll have all the Leos in that state. Some states have special information we've gathered to help voters return their ballots. If they have it, it'll be here. And then finally, every state has additional resources where if a voter needs to check the state website where they're registered, for whether I'm registered, send them here or give them the link from here. We tell you to do that because it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole on the state websites and get into information that's only for in-state voters. Our rules can be very different. Where we're listed as being registered voters can actually be in a different spot. So we vetted these websites to show where, so they're the correct websites for voters to go to. Going back onto the main page, we also have FAQs, and I don't know how great, sorry, let me go to, this is the FAQ page. I don't know that many voters will come here to read it, but they're more than welcome to. But it's a great place for you as a volunteer to come if you don't remember something specifically, or if you just want to copy and paste the information so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. These are questions we get all the time. We set up a FAQ for them, and that way you don't have to remember everything. So for example, if you're helping someone return their ballot and they need to fax it back, like they're a Florida voter, you can come here and there is an FAQ about, I need to send it back by fax and I don't have access to a fax machine. If you click on there, you can just copy and paste information from here. It's already set up for you. We're really big into not reinventing the wheel. We deal with these questions a lot. And then finally, on Sandbox only is a special section called For Volunteers. That's where we've compiled information that you as a volunteer may need. And that way you don't have to go clicking around looking for stuff or try to bookmark everything. If you're looking for some information that's not on the state rules or the FAQs, come to the For Volunteers page. And it looks like this. It's tools for volunteers. I'm going to be updating this as we go into 2026, but basically on the left-hand side is general information involving all of the states. Sometimes you just want to look at several states at once, or you want to compare or have a quick visual of what's going on in different states, and we've compiled information here. And we try to have one thing, so we don't have, so if something needs to be updated, it's in one spot rather than having different country committees having their own materials. So like, for example, if you're at a voter event, a lot of times people will print out this map of the ballot return options, and it looks something like this. So you can see here that quick glance, you can see any state that's in the lighter blue can return ballots electronically. Any state that is in purple must mail back their ballot. The yellow states can fax back ballots, and the orange states there, only military can return electronically. So it's just if you want a quick reference like that, those sorts of things, look here on this page rather than trying to, again, reinvent the wheel. On the right-hand side of the page are the training information. So again, if you want to look back on slide decks, you can look for them here. And we had set up for 2025 states that we were concentrating on. We had these specific voting tips and issues. So again, if we learned something important, it could go there and you didn't have to keep searching through materials to find stuff. Okay, so that's what's available to you on Vote From Abroad. And now I'm going to go through setting up an FPCA form. I should point out it's probably going to take me longer for me to talk about it than it is for you to actually do one. But you click Start here, and you're at your form. So most people know their name. It's not usually a problem. And if they previously registered under a different name, if someone has gotten married and changed their name, it helps the Leo find them. They can do that here. Putting in a phone number. You can click on the flag and change the country if you want. Otherwise, it'll format it for you automatically, like that. There are accessibility options here where if someone needs to use the phone number keypad, it's available to them. Putting in your address, that is required. I'm going to put in Heidi B at VoteFromAbroad.org. We ask people to double check the email, and we're actually going to ask them a couple of times during this process because it's so important. This is how your Leo gets in touch with you. This is where your Leo will likely be sending your ballot. We have typos. We get the forms all the time where people mistype their name. And easy ones, we'll try to catch, if they do gmail.cm or something like that. But a lot of times we've had ones where we just couldn't figure out how to contact this person and their FPCA never got sent in. So we type it in, we write, please double check. We also say, make them click that, yes, my email address is correct. When you're doing these as a test, I would suggest that you put in an email address you have access to, because part of the testing is, even though the form doesn't get sent into the Leo, you will see the emails that go to the voter. So you have a better idea of the whole process if you put in a real email address rather than Mickey Mouse or something. So then we're asking for their current address abroad. And you'll see this I button here. We have them throughout. We're trying to give people information where they need it. If they click on it, it will give them additional information. Basically, they need to provide a non-US address to prove that, yes, they are entitled to UOCAVA, that they are living outside the US. We still want them to get their ballots sent to them by email, but they do have to give some sort of non-US address. It can be residential, it can be a mailing address. Sometimes people, particularly in Mexico, Central America, will have a mailing address in the US that they want things sent to. That's fine, but that's not here. That is the next section down. This must have a foreign address. It won't take a US address unless it's like a military address. So again, you can click on the flag to change the country, make sure it's in your country, and then it'll format for you automatically. I'm just going to put in a fake one, put in a fake city. We used to have it so that you would start typing and it would give suggested email addresses. We just took that out because it was a third-party application through Google, and they had so many problems with non-US addresses that were like, it's easier for people know their address. They can type it in themselves. So that's an address. Type that in, and like I said, if they have a mail forwarding address they prefer to use, it's an optional section here just below that. Again, you can still get your blank ballot sent to you by email, but some election offices will mail to your current address to make sure that you're still alive, for example. And so if you think you might get other materials, or if you want your ballot mailed to you, and it's a US address, you can put it in here. So. Whatever. I'll put in Dallas, Texas. There seems to be a lot of people have them in Texas. And then that's it for the addresses. The next thing they need to put in is their voting address in the US. And again, there's an I button here to explain it to people, because they do get a little confused, particularly if they've been out of the US a long time. Because we are the only voters who don't live in the US, we have to have an address so that they know where to place us, so that they know what ballot to send us. And our voting address is the last place you lived in the US. It has to be a street address, a residential address that you lived there. And that is where they will know where to place you in the jurisdiction. If you've never lived in the US, and there are categories of voters, typically children of US citizens who are born abroad and have reached age 18 without having ever lived in the US, their rule is that they use the US address of their US parent. If they have more than one who have different addresses, they can choose. But it must be a residential address. It must be in the US. And it doesn't matter how long you've been gone. It doesn't matter if your mom and dad sold that house and no one lives there anymore. It doesn't matter if it got torn down and it's a parking lot. It's the last place you lived in the US. They just have that general rule. We do have a fill-in here. I'm going to use an address that I'm making up, but it will give you ideas to click on, because people can forget or they don't know their zip code or something. But I'm just going to fill in Savannah. I'm going to click on Georgia there. Because I'm making it up, I'm just putting in a zip code, but it automatically fills in the county for me. That is on the form, your county, so it finds it for you. And if possible, it will automatically fill in the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction is basically where your Leo is. Georgia uses counties. And it pulled up the county for me. If it can't decide what your county is, if there could be a couple possibilities, then there'll be a drop down and the voter has to choose. But we tried not to make them choose as much as possible because we did have people clicking on the wrong drop down. So wanted to get rid of that error. Now we also asked them, are they registered to vote in this jurisdiction that was just chosen? The reason we asked them is that in a couple of states, if you're already registered to vote, you can send in your form by email and you may have a later deadline. But in those states, if you are not registered yet and are using this form to register to vote, then your deadline may be earlier. You may have to send it in by mail only. So we wanted to be able to guide the voter into what their roles are going to be. So we asked them about that. If they're not sure, which a lot of people aren't, they can click that. If they're in a state where it matters, then later we'll direct them to a site to say, you can check here. If they're still not sure, then the assumption is no, they're not registered. So they get those rules. But I'm just going to put yes here. And then the next section is voter category. And this is really important. This is something that the voter chooses their own category because it's requesting their intention. Do you intend to return, or is your intention to return uncertain? Those are the two main categories. I'll talk about the other categories in a moment. But for most voters, they choose the category because they're the only ones who know what their intentions are. And intentions can change as well. But it can affect what ballot they receive. It's very state specific. And to help voters and you as a volunteer, we have it set up so it automatically gives the state specific information. So for example, if you're in Georgia and you say your return is uncertain, it tells you that you will receive a ballot for federal elections only, but you're not eligible to vote in Georgia state elections. Different states have different rules about this. And in Georgia, for example, if you say, I intend to return, it gives you the explanation that intend to return means you have an intention to return in the future. But you don't need to have, firm plans or a ticket in hand. You just have to say, yes, I have this intention. That's a pretty low bar. So we do give people a bit of a heads up that that could be a factor as to whether they might be subject to Georgia state income tax. And again, being very careful here because we are not tax experts. We do not give tax advice. We don't want to tell people which category to choose. It's their decision. But we want to make sure they have full information. So stay within these parameters, explain, what it means. Make sure they read it. A lot of your job is making sure people actually read the instructions. But they decide what it is they want to do. Now, the other categories here are civilian that I've never lived in the US. And again, if they're one of those people born abroad, never lived in the US, they would click this and they would be told that they will receive a ballot for federal elections only. Again, this is specific to Georgia. Other states may let I've never lived in the US folks vote in all elections. It is very state specific. And And then the other two categories are military, active duty, or their spouse or dependent. We don't get many of them, um, but they may have special rules, typically better rules than civilians, and they certainly, can choose that. Um, but we typically focus on the civilians. Now, the never lived in the US is a special category. Um, and make sure if someone says they're in that category, ask them, because people get confused. Never means never. They'll be like, yeah, I've never lived in the US. I left when I was 8. You lived in the US. You were 8 when you left. It doesn't matter. This applies to people who have never lived in the US. Otherwise, they choose whether return is uncertain or intend to return. But one thing I want to point out with the never lived folks is that there are 12 states that don't allow US citizens to register to vote if they haven't resided in the state for a certain number of days. So those folks are effectively blocked from registering to vote, even though they are US citizens and have the right to vote. What we do on VFA is we follow the federal government's website. The federal government is called the Federal Voting Assistance Program.gov, FVAP.gov. For those states, those 12 states, they only offer the options to choose, I intend to return or my return is uncertain. They don't offer the never lived in the US as an option. So we follow them. We feel no reason to be more restrictive than what the federal government does. So after they've chosen their voter category, I'm just going to go with intend to return here. They get to choose how they would like to receive their ballot. We very much recommend that they request their ballot be sent to them by email or online. They avoid all the issues with postal delays or their ballot getting lost, particularly if they're in a state where they have to mail it back, because just because you can get it by email, you may still need to mail it back. You want that ballot as quickly as possible so you have time to return it. We also have to remind voters that when the time comes for the ballot to come out, check their spam folder. Ballots tend to always go to spam folders. So that's something we'll talk about in the next one. So if they choose email or online, we ask them to double check their email address. They're not going to get their ballot if there's a typo. And then there is an option, it's on the form, so we add it here, that if they want to provide an alternate email address. Don't know many people that use that, but it's there. They have the option to get it to them sent by fax. I think very few people use that, but they'll put in their fax number here. If they do request it be sent to them by mail, they can choose that option. If they put in a mail forwarding address like I did earlier, it will show up here, but they can change it if they wish. So that's that option. And now we're getting to the last page. And let me make sure I've got it. Yeah. So this is the last part of filling out the form, and putting in your birth date should be fairly obvious for most people. And then there's an optional question about their sex. It used to be on the form and it's no longer there, but we kept it for anonymized statistical purposes. There's one state where it is required as well. So don't be surprised. I'll let you know it's Idaho. So you may not see very many Idaho folks, but we kept it in there for them. And then the next question is asking for their identification. This is actually another reason why it's very good to use the FPCA form, because the identification that's required is different than what's may be required in the state. It's understood that many of us no longer have state ID, which can be required for registering to vote in a state. But it can be a little confusing because different states have slightly different requirements, and we want to make sure that people understand what their state requires. So The rule is that if you have a Social Security number, you should provide it. Most states only ask for the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. There are a couple that ask for the full thing. And again, Vote From Abroad will make sure that's specified. Same with a state or territory ID. If you have a state driver's license still, please put it in, but you're not required to have one. And then the final option is I don't have the above identification. If you don't have either a Social Security number or a state ID, you can check that box. Problem is, different states act differently. Most states are like, fine, they'll assign you a number, put you in their system, it's not a problem. Other states will want more information from you in order to process the form, and that can lead to delays. And there are a few states that will outright deny it, your form, if you don't have either identification. So we kind of made that box a little bit smaller with the idea we didn't want people going, I don't want to find my Social Security number, I'll just click none of the above. But if you do click I don't have the above identification, I wanted to point out that sometimes a state has a special rule, and you won't see them for every state and even for every voter in a state. But what happens for Georgia, if you click I don't have above identification, Georgia has a specific rule that if you don't have a Social Security number or state ID, you have to provide proof of identity, such as a US passport. So we put it in here. It'll pop up if you do that. If you were to instead put in your Social Security number, it would not show up. So it's just for the people who need it. I'm going to put So like I said, don't be surprised if you see a special rule pop up when you haven't seen one before. And then also on the form is putting in your political party. This is on the form, but you're not required to provide an answer. You can say prefer not to answer. The reason it's on there is because some states require you to choose a political party if you want to vote in primaries. Everyone can vote in the general election, whether or not they choose a party. Since that is state specific, the I button will tell you. For here, for Georgia, if you don't choose a political party, you're still eligible to vote in the primary elections. But if, you can check that. So if you choose Republican, for example, that's it. The only thing left is whether you want to put in any additional information. This is a freehand type box. I changed my email address or something. Sometimes it's good to give the Leo a little nudge that there's something different on your form, for example, because they don't always notice. And that can lead to problems. But so if you're Republican, that's it, and you're done. If you say any other political party, for example, Democratic, you'll still get that additional information box, but that's where you'll be asked, do you want to join DA? We really like this because we get a lot of members this way. We also have, if you say already a member, it updates your information in your membership profile if you're on the regular website. And if you say yes or already a member, then you'll get some additional questions about can we contact you? This is for GDPR purposes and checking your information. So when you're working with the voter, I would very much suggest, trying to get them to say yes or already a member. But for you, when you're working on this, when you're testing it out, it's fine to just say no, and then you don't have to deal with those extra questions. And that's it. That is the form. When you click next, you've filled out the form. We've asked people to take a look at it, to review it. We've had to make it very clear. A lot of people got to this page and thought, okay, there's my form, I'm done. It's like, no, it needs to be signed and submitted. So we put in a big, you're not done yet. Review it. There is a table version for people who need screen readers. But this is what the form looks like. And you can see some of these boxes are pretty small, but it has all the information you put in, including that I want my ballot by email. This is where that additional information is put. It's box 6. And since I said I don't have a social security number, it's there. Then I'm providing a copy of my US passport, the thing I typed in. And then it also, we put on every one that I wish to receive a ballot for all elections that I'm eligible to vote in. Sometimes you can say on the form, I only want the next election. And some Leos have come back to us and said, if it's not on there, we're only doing the next election, not every election in the year, which is wrong, but it was easier to just put it on there because we figure it's a lot better for someone who does go back to the US before the end of the year to update their status, or if they do get their overseas ballot emailed to them, just let their Leo know they're back, versus someone who thought they were going back, stays outside the US and misses their ballot because they forgot to resubmit a new FPCA form. The less work people need to do, the better. The other thing on here is that it automatically dates it. This isn't a big deal for you all, but we did realize that people on the other side of the international date line were dating their things a day ahead and they're maybe missing deadlines. So this date is automatically set to be US Eastern time. So if you're, for some reason, filling out an FPCA after midnight in Spain, it will still say the day before, because in the US East Coast, it's still the day before. So that's it. That's filling out the form. And now the next part is probably the most confusing part, but also the most useful, which is signing it and sending it in. And like I said, it takes longer to fill this out, to tell you how to fill it out than to do it. But once it's all done, if the voter is able to use our photo signature option, where they take a photo of their signature, upload it to their form, and then send the form directly to their Leo, they will see this page. They will get this option. They don't have to take that option. They can say, no, I don't want to do that nonsense. And then they just say, no, I don't wish to attach my form now. But if they do want to sign now, and this is what we hope they will do, it's one of the major value adds of Vote From Abroad, is they say, yes, I want to sign now. They have to, this is on the form that there's signing under penalty of perjury, that everything's correct. And then they have 2 options for how they can add their scanned signature. They can either click here to upload a file, and they'll get a thing saying, to upload files from their computer. Please point out to them that PDF files do not work. It has to be an image file, like a JPEG, PNG. And we say processing time can take up to a minute. It actually will not take longer than 30 seconds, but we didn't want to encourage people to get annoyed easily. The other option that they can do is they take a photo of their signature. And again, the processing time may take up to a minute. This is going to get fixed. I'm going to do it real quick. Hopefully it'll work okay while I'm on Zoom. But you click take a photo of your signature. And it tells you, let me allow here. Oh, it's not, may not be working on Zoom. Okay. Anyhow, it says sign your name in dark ink on a piece of paper. Then move the signature in front of the camera, click take photo. And that will upload the photo. So it's processing the image, even though I didn't turn on. Hopefully this won't take too long. Oh dear. See if it, I want to go on to the next page, guys. Come on.
We should have started the timer.
Yeah. Well, it's because we're on Zoom that it's taking incredibly long. It doesn't usually. Um, there it goes. Okay, so when you've taken the picture, it uploads faster than that, and it gives you instructions that you can move the signature to fit into this red box. We actually gave people a little bit of leeway that anything outside the black lines will be cropped out, but they can either use their mouse or their finger, or they can use these buttons to make the image smaller, larger, move it around, rotate. It will, if you're diagonal, it'll move it down slightly each click, and just so it looks like like your signature. Because the way it works is when you're emailing in something, typically you sign a piece of paper, take a picture of it, and send in that photograph of your signature. So we're kind of reversing the order so people don't have to print. They're taking a picture of their signature, putting it on the form, and then sending it in. So we want to get a nice, clean photo. If it didn't work out well, they can always click try again. Otherwise, they can click use this signature. Then they get an option. Do you want it sent directly to your election office? That's what we prefer they do because they're done. They've sent it in, they've signed it and sent it in. They do have the option to get it emailed directly to them, and I'll talk about that later. But when they're emailing directly to the election office, they're told that it's going to be sent directly to the election office, and we'll send them a confirmation email with a copy of their form. We do ask if they would like to get a reminder to make sure their election office accepted it. We can't send them a reminder without their okay. So we ask them if we can. A lot of people, I think like 75% of people say yes, which is great. We can then, about 3 days later, we'll send them an automatic email saying everything okay? And that really helps. When you're doing this as a test, it's fine to say no, because otherwise you're going to get an email in 3 days that you're going to be like, what's this about? So I'm just going to do no, but so then this is what they see. This is an email that's coming from them to their election office. Here's a message. They can go in and change whatever they wish, but that's a general message. And because I had said didn't have identification in Georgia, and that I was sending in a US passport photo instead, this is a reminder to send that in. Upload that file, that document, so you can send it in with your FPCA form. And again, if you didn't have that requirement, you wouldn't see this. And that's it. You just, I'm just going to send email. I'm not going to upload the file. And it's reminding me I forgot it. Fine, send anyway. And that's it. The email has been not pretend sent to the Leo. And you get this final message saying, recommend that you contact the Leo to verify they've received it, and here's their contact information. Thanks for coming. You'll, in your inbox, you will see an email that looks like this. Because this is a test, not since a Leo, it didn't get sent in because it's from Sandbox. And you'll just get, again, the same email saying, we sent it in, you need to follow up and check that it actually was received. It's really important people do that because we've sent it in, but we can't guarantee that the Leo will process it, that they'll do what they need to do, that they, so many things can happen with email. Email is not perfect, so it's really important that people check. Okay, so the other thing people can do if they aren't able to use the photo signature option for any reason, or if they're not interested in doing that, is they can have the form sent to them by email. So I'm going to show you on a Florida address because Florida requires you to mail in your ballot, your FPCA form if you're not already registered. So I'm going to say I'm not already registered to vote in Miami, but I intend to return. So doing this real quick. Okay, done. Redid it as a Florida voter. You can see I'm a Florida voter here. And because I said I'm not registered yet, the system knows that I need to mail it in. So it doesn't give me the photo signature option. It just goes straight to, great, we're going to email it directly to you. So on email directly to you, it says we're going to send you an email and you'll need to print it and sign it before sending it to your election official. Again, do you want a reminder? And then we say, okay, this is the email address that's going to appear on your FPCA. This is where we're going to send your that email to. Is this correct? Again, making sure it's not a typo. There's an optional thing here that might be of interest to you when you're doing voter events or helping a voter. If they don't have access to a printer from their own email, they have the option to put in a different email address as well, an additional email address so that someone can print it for them. So for example, a lot of times at voter events, there'll be a printer there attached to someone else's email. They can email it to them directly and get the printing done, but that email address won't show up on the FPCA form. So you send that email and sorry. This is what the voter will see. They'll get an email that looks like this saying, here's your FPCA form for you to download, print, and sign, and here are the instructions how to send it in. I'm going to pull these up. Because the voting instructions we send, we've worked hard to make them as specific to the voter as possible. So they're told, review your form, sign it, and then submit it to your local election official in Florida. It says you've indicated you're registering to vote, so you must submit by mail. Here's the mailing address. Here's the link to the postage paid templates if that's available to you. Confirm they received it. Very important. And then mark your calendar to look for your ballot. We also put in the election deadline so people can have that calendar for them as well. So that's going through and doing the FPCA form. Let me go back here. And those are kind of all the quirks you'll see.
Oh, we already had these.
So sorry, can someone mute? Thank you. So that's getting everything people need to be sent in. If someone needs to submit by mail or by fax, we emphasize sending in by email because that's the preferred method to do it. It's quick, it's free, it's reliable, but some states may require mail or even fax. We do have FAQs for ideas on how to do that best, particularly with fax. People are like, I don't have a fax machine. It's like, don't worry, we got you covered. There are ways to do this. And again, it's preferable to at least fax it in than to mail it in. And that's it. That is the training. And I'm going to stop sharing in just a minute and answer questions. But the next steps for this are, if you don't have a confidentiality agreement on file yet, please put one in. You are going to be seeing people's personal information as you help them vote. There's just no way around it. And we need to make sure that you understand the privacy aspects. And then after this, we're going to go to the second module, which is ballot receipt and return, which is actually a lot shorter. We do have quizzes that I will send everyone. Again, they're not meant to be tricky. It's meant to just reinforce the information that we've talked about. You'll have these slides to review as well. And if, it's open book because we don't want you to, I should put this in slideshow. We don't want you to guess. We don't want you to think you have to memorize all this information. We want you to know where to find it. There are another training we have is for using the backup ballot. You're welcome to use to go through that on your own. That's kind of just do it yourself. FVAP has a voter assistance officer training, which we encourage people to take. It doesn't teach you anything different, but it does let you say you are now a federally trained voting assistance officer, which is always a nice thing to do. And future trainings would be working on the voter help desk, and also working on the Zoom one-to-one thing. When we have drop-ins, we need Zoom hosts who can manage the information and help manage volunteers. So I am going to stop sharing.
Here, I can read a couple of the questions for you if you want to take them now. I think
Sure,
it's better to do these questions before we start the new topic, right?
Oh, definitely. Let's go through them. Happy to do it.
So Dermot had asked, if I register in January 2026, do I still have to request ballots for elections in November? Helen answered that and said, no, as long as you register and request your ballot at the beginning of the year, you're good for the whole year. And you actually showed that on the form, so that's good. And then Dermot had another question. Does voter registration last only for the current year? So I'll let you answer that one, Heidi.
So the way it works is the same form will register you to vote and request your ballot. In most states, you stay registered, but you still have to request your ballot in subsequent years. There are a couple states where they consider it a temporary registration but it doesn't really matter. It's the same form, just send it in every year and make sure you'll get your ballots.
Can I add a writer? Can I add another writer to that?
Sure.
Do you have to request your ballot every year?
Yes, most states you do have to request your ballot every year, even though you're a registered voter. There are a couple states that are exceptions to that, but it's easy just to give people a blanket rule and just make sure, voter roll purges are a thing. Stuff happens. Be sure and send in the form.
Here's a good question. This is from Renee. She says, great presentation, thanks. If someone has moved abroad but still receives mail at a U.S. mailing address, do they need to go through the process of registering to vote from abroad?
It's up to them. We would strongly encourage them to do that because you will get your ballot sent to you by email. So no matter where you are in the world, it will get to you. You'll have, in most states, an option to return your ballot electronically rather than by mail. You'll get your ballot 45 days in advance. So there's no reason not to do it. And it gives you a lot of advantages. People assume, oh, I'll be back in the US in November, I'll vote then. Stuff happens. And it's a good thing to cover yourself and send in the FPCA form.
Yeah, the email delivery is everything because plans change. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Breaking news from Jim Mercereau. Federal judges blocked Texas from using its new House maps in the 2026 midterms. Yay.
Oh, so maybe we won't redo California after all.
I hope that stands.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, and Colin asks, is there a video available online to teach people how to register themselves? Essentially something like this, but for voters instead of volunteers?
No, we don't have that set up just for voters. We kind of figure going through the website itself leads them by the hand. You have thought about doing it though. And there are various short videos that speak to specific things like how to fax back your ballot and stuff like that. But something to think about, and definitely I'll talk to the comms team about, because I am not a video person.
No, we have a great comms team though.
We do.
Okay, Jonelle says if someone lives abroad but will be in the States on the election day, how do they request their ballot?
Well, we, again, urge them to send in the FPCA form, so that if things change and they're not actually in the States on election day, they are still covered. Depending on when they go back, it's up to them. They can vote their overseas ballot like they received, and they're done. If they want to vote in person, that's also fine, but they obviously can't do both. What we tell people is, if you're going to be back in the States, talk to your Leo ahead of time. You don't want to show up at the polls because things are too confusing. Your Leo is going to be concerned that they don't want you voting twice. So they're going to want to either be able to cancel the overseas ballot they sent to you, or have you bring it in and give it to them or something. And if you just show up at the polls, they're going to be like, we don't know what to do. Talk to your Leo ahead of time. Pretty much everything is talk to your Leo ahead of time if you're doing anything different.
Great. You will be sharing the slides, right? After this
Yes.
presentation, we can send these out by email to everybody along with the recording. And what happens if someone has previously registered using a current US mailing address versus their last residence address?
I tell people we're not the voting address police. If you don't get it perfect, if you use your sister's address versus your last, it's up to the Leo to accept the form for their jurisdiction. And again, it being your last US address is just, they had to come up with a rule. So, if you're comfortable voting there, you feel you have enough ties, your Leo's okay with it, it's fine. But if you are truly in the wrong one, if you it's a mailing address and you've never lived there, that shouldn't be sufficient for you to vote in that jurisdiction. You should just refile your FPCA in the correct jurisdiction. And when it's accepted, maybe go to the old jurisdiction and let them know to cancel. It's a nice thing for you to do to help them keep their voter rolls clean, but it's not required. But yeah, it kind of depends on the situation.
Okay, are there any further questions? I had a question about the photo signature. Does it matter what color ink they use? Like, does it look more authentic if you use blue instead of black or something like that?
I don't think it matters. Most people use black ink, I think. But it doesn't matter. I mean, try not to use red.
Okay. I always tell people also not to use a piece of paper that has something written on the back side because it tends to come through and mess up the
Right.
quality of the photo. Lisa Berger has a question.
Thank you. Actually, I vote in Maryland and I was putting my last address, but I can't receive mail there. And when I updated my driver's license, I had to use a friend's address so that they could send it to them. And then they updated my mailing voting address to that new address, which I never lived at. So I don't know if that's a problem. It's kind of
Well,
all
the
in the
fact that
same
you have a
county.
driver. Yeah. I mean, it really doesn't matter. You, because you have a driver's license there and you gave them an address, and Motor Voter says, we'll update you. Technically your voting address should be the last place you lived, and your mail forwarding address, that optional one underneath it, is the new address. But sorry, sorry, your current. So what address did you use for your current address? Did you use an FPCA form and use your
Yeah. Well, yes, I did, and then they changed it back to my last address that I lived at, and so I accepted that, and I just thought I don't want to be, on anyone's bad side. It's all in the same county, though. That's the problem.
It should be fine. You and I can talk offline later, maybe, Lisa,
Okay, good.
because because they changed it automatically, it's, you're relying on them. And so you're not in trouble type of
Okay,
thing.
okay,
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to make sure.
yeah, no,
Thank you.
you're allowed to rely on what the state does.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Um, but yeah, if you want to talk offline, we can look into the specifics. But generally, you give them your current address. If you have a mailing address in the States, put it below it. And then your voting address is the last place you lived. And that's where you vote. But, stuff happens. It's really the Leo's job to make sure you're at the right address. You're just doing the best you can. You're not an expert, you're a voter. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so I have another module to talk about for ballot receipt and return. Let me share a screen with that. Pull it up a second. Okay, so this one will be about kind of the next step that people have presumably sent in their FPCA forms, and now ballots are available for the election, and they're either not seeing it or they need help getting it back. So we're going to go through this, and I will share screen. I'll put this in slideshow. No, sorry, it's not on the. Let me put it on the first deck. Don't worry, this doesn't have nearly as many slides. So to go back over what we talked about with regard to UOCAVA, that is a federal law that sets basic guidelines for what the states must do. They must accept the FPCA form. They must send your ballot out by email if you request it. They must start sending it 45 days in advance, all that sort of stuff. Whatever isn't explicitly covered in UOCAVA, each state gets to decide on its own. So there is a lot of okay, this is the general rule, this is how the state implements it. So we're going to be talking about that. The bottom line, though, is that the local election official is the state official who determines if a ballot will be sent out to you and if it will be accepted when you return it. So if in doubt, we always tell the voter, talk to your Leo. If you need help, we can talk with, we can be there to help you. A lot of times I'll offer to call on the voter's behalf because I'm in Toronto and the time zones work a lot better. But the Leo is kind of the person we rely upon. One thing to be aware of when you're doing this type of volunteering work is that you're dealing with people's ballots. Very special, much more special than an FPCA form. There needs to be an awareness of the need for privacy and nonpartisan behavior. So take extra care that you're not viewing their ballot, how they're voting. Try to avert your eyes. People tend to be completely unaware. And don't handle the ballot itself. Don't look like you're telling them how to vote, anything like that. You're just helping them handle the logistics. So, like I said, states decide how to implement the rules in UOCAVA and how to process ballots in general. So they decide how they're going to deliver ballots. Typically, we tell people get it by email, and most people do. And then but the state decides, is this going to be an email attachment? Is it going to be a portal that people have to sign into? Stuff like that. They also decide how you return your ballots. Even though you can get it by email, some states require you to return it by mail. The good news is a majority of the states, I think it's 33, will let overseas voters return ballots electronically. which means either email or fax or online upload. A couple of states have started experimenting with you actually voting on your computer screen and sending it in. But it's very few and far between. Most of them require you to send it to print it out, sign it, and then send it back as an email attachment or a fax. And that's great because it creates a paper trail. They can't mess with your ballot because you've got the paper on one side, they get the paper on the other. They also decide the deadline for the ballot to be received. And that's why we have those election deadline charts on the state voting rules. Each state gets to make its own rules. Some require it be received by election day. Others say as long as it's postmarked by election day, you get extra time for it to actually get to their offices. So we can help voters navigate what the state requires or allows. And we have resources to help them that we'll go over as well. But with all help functions, the first step is to determine what's the problem. So the first thing we're going to look at is ballot receipt issues. People coming up to you saying, "Where's my ballot? I haven't received my ballot yet." Now, again, GOTV requires states to start sending out ballots at least 45 days before a federal election. We call that ballot day or ballot drop day. So typically for the November general elections, that's going to usually be about September 20th. Just so you know, elections are on Tuesdays, which means 45 days in advance is always going to be a Saturday. Somebody didn't think that through. But if it's a different election, or if you want to know for that election, since it moves around in November, just do a search for 45 days before November 3rd, 2025, and it will tell you. But that's just when ballots must start going out. The deadline for a voter to request their ballot is much later. So if a voter sends in their FPCA form after, say, September 20th, they're still fine. They've still met the deadline, and the LEO will be required to send out the ballot within a few days of accepting the form. And the exact timing depends on state law. But don't think that that 45 days is your deadline to request. That's just when ballots must start going out. So if someone comes to you and says, "I don't have my ballot yet," the first thing you have to ask yourself is, are ballots even available yet? People do jump the gun. September 1st, you'll get people asking. So if it's not time yet, the best thing to do is to plan ahead. Confirm that the voter sent in an FPCA form. You'd be surprised how many people have not. Tell them, ballots are out, whatever the day is, mark your calendar. And then also tell the voter and give them the LEO's contact information so that they can confirm that the FPCA was received, the ballot will be coming out. It's always better to get on top of problems. And if, the voter finds out early that there was a problem with the FPCA or it was never received, we can fix that much earlier, much easier in August than we can in October. If ballots are available and should have started going out already, then we have this checklist. First of all, did the voter send in their FPCA this year? If so, when and how? Like I said, voters, you always have to confirm, and don't just take a yes, I did. If you ask them if you can see it, they can block out their social security number or anything that we don't need to see. But you'd be surprised how many people say, "Oh yeah, I sent it in," and then you ask to see it and they don't have it. And they're like, "Well, I sent it in, 2 years ago. I voted in 24. Doesn't that count?" No. It doesn't. We need to make sure they send it an FPCA form this year. Or they are registered as in-state voters and they don't realize that they're not under GOTV protections, and the state will only mail out their ballot 30 days in advance. They haven't sent one in, just send one in. That's the answer. If they did send in their FPCA form, did they ask to get their ballot by email? You know, again, if they ask for it by mail, they can just send in a new FPCA form asking for it to be sent by email. It's fine to update that. It's a good idea to put in the additional information that they're doing that. Just too many postal mail disruptions these days to trust a ballot being sent by mail. If they did request it by email, when did you do it? You got to give the Leo time to process it. So check on that. If they did everything right and everything, first thing you do is check your spam folder. So many ballots go to spam folders and people don't notice. The other thing is that they're checking the wrong email inbox, and that's something to look on the FPCA form. What email address did you tell the Leo to send it to? Make sure there was no typo. If there's any problem with that, if they're still not seeing it, then contact the Leo and confirm that the Leo got the FPCA form and sent out the ballot. If the Leo says, yeah, I sent out the ballot, the voter can ask for a replacement. Sometimes we'll stay on the line while the Leo does it just to make sure it comes through properly. Sometimes there's tech issues. But if the Leo says they didn't get that FPCA form, send a new one right away. The voter should have the copy of the one that Vote From Abroad sent them. But if they don't, they can just send in a new one. And if the FPCA, if the Leo says, yes, I got it, but I rejected it, or you're not eligible for this election, that's when we can help. We can talk to the Leo, discuss what the problem is, try to fix it, or explain to the Leo why they're wrong. And again, if that's not something you're comfortable with doing, get a more experienced volunteer to help you. Voters will also complain because they didn't get the full ballot. This goes back to what ballot you can expect to get based on your voter category. So if someone comes and says, I only got the federal elections, go check on Vote From Abroad state rules for what ballot they could expect. If they're in a state where they'll only get federal because they said their return is uncertain, they do have the option to change their category if they want. This can be a little bit dicey though, because this is the voter's decision if they wish to change their category and if they're eligible to do so. We can explain the rules to them, and what intend to return means that you don't have to have a set date, but you do have to have an intention to return in the future. But they're the only ones who know what their intentions are. And they're the ones signing this form under penalty of perjury. So they have to be comfortable with the decision. And they have to be comfortable deciding if that truly is their intention. One thing I would say is don't make up the rules. Please go read what's on Vote From Abroad. The state voting rules page has the state specific information for that voter. And there's also general information in the FAQ, which is, should I choose intend to return, or my return is uncertain. But don't be seen as telling the voter, you should change your category. It's up to them. It's not our call. The other thing that can hinder a voter getting their ballot is tech issues. I am not a tech person myself. And if you're comfortable helping troubleshoot, that's great. If not, we can certainly talk to another volunteer who can find someone who is more comfortable with those issues. But the tech issues we see are, like I said, some states will send a ballot through an online portal, and you have to put in passwords and do all this stuff, and it can get quite confusing for the voters. Best thing to do is to read the instructions, go through them carefully, and try to do it. For a couple of states, if you go to the state voting rules page, you'll see ballot information guides, how to download your ballot. I think Pennsylvania and New York, for example, are particularly tricky. So you can maybe help the voter if they're not feeling very tech competent. Sometimes a state website will be blocked because they're not allowing non-US computers to access as a bit of security theater, as we call it. It does nothing to help with security of voting. It just blocks people like us. So we do have an FAQ about how to use a VPN, virtual private network, which you can change the location of your computer electronically, so it looks like you're in the US and you can then access these websites. There is an FAQ with instructions, but again, if you're not comfortable with it, find someone who is. And the last bit of tech assistance is when you're getting your ballot by email, you will have to print it out. And people can have trouble finding a printer, which, we can help them try to locate one in the area. A library, a local volunteer, may have a printer that they'll print it out for them and give it to them, stuff like that. Or if they do have a printer, ballots come in US size paper. They're sized for US paper. And for Europeans like you all, you may need to use print to fit or do like 94% to make it fit. It's fine. You don't have to use US paper. You don't have to use special paper. And you can print it on multiple pieces. It just has to be printed large enough that the Leo can read your ballot choices. So once voters have their ballots, the next issue is getting it back. The biggest problem for overseas voters is making sure their ballots get back by the deadline. So many are rejected because they're late, particularly if they have to mail it back. Now, keep in mind, every state has its own rules. Never assume that you know what they are, even if you vote in that state. Always read the ballot instructions carefully that will come with a ballot. And you can also check the resources on Vote From Abroad. But often just reading through the instructions carefully can help solve the voters' confusion. Now, the most common reason a ballot is rejected is, like I said, it got back late. So we cannot emphasize enough how important it is that the voters send in their FPCA form as early in the year as possible, so that they are on the rolls and they will get their ballot sent to them as soon as it's available, that they get their ballot sent to them by email. So again, they get it as soon as it's available, and that they return it by as early as possible using the quickest method available to them. If they have the option to return electronically, we very much encourage them to do so. Now, ballots are also rejected because the voter didn't sign it properly. Your ballot is secret. How you voted is secret, but they need to know that you are a valid voter and eligible to vote in this election. So there is a form where you fill out your information and sign it, that you're a valid voter. They will separate how you voted from the fact that you are a voter, but you do need to give them that information or they can't count your ballot. And finally, just not following the instructions. A ballot will come with full ballot instructions. Every state has its own quirks. You need to make sure you're reading those carefully. We will also have on that For Volunteers page on Sandbox, if we're found out information about a state or even a county that's doing something different or their ballot instructions have changed, we will put that information there. So those are resources you can check to make sure everything's up to date. So when you're returning a ballot, you're basically returning the ballot package because, like I said, they have to know who you are and credit and not make sure you're not voting twice, for example, and that you're eligible to vote in that jurisdiction. I'm going to emphasize it again. Follow the instructions that come with the ballot. Those are your holy grail. Don't assume because you do it a certain way in your jurisdiction that other jurisdictions do the same thing. And like I said, a lot of times we'll just go over reading the instructions with the voter, and that will clear things up. But if it's still unclear, talk to a more experienced volunteer, and we'll probably wind up calling the Leo, um, because they are the ultimate arbiters of whether they're going to accept this ballot. And all we want is to get the ballot in the box. So there are basically two types of returning. It's either by postal mail or electronic return, depending on your state. If you're returning postal mail, it usually requires 2 envelopes. And we have an FAQ with pictures about that. But basically, you're putting your ballot where you're voting your choices in a sealed envelope. It has no other identifying information on it, and that keeps it secret. And that goes into a second envelope where you also put your identifying information. That way they can, when it arrives at the election office, they check that, yes, this is valid ballot. They put all your identifying information in one pile. They put your sealed ballot in another pile to be tallied later. And then the other thing is with electronic return. It is different because it can't be sealed in an envelope. So voters have to sign a waiver acknowledging that they're returning the ballot electronically and are waiving their right to a secret ballot. Don't let that scare people, because yes, it's not in a sealed envelope, but they will separate your ballot from your identifying information as early in the process as possible. No one is keeping track of how you voted, just that you are a valid voter who returned a ballot. And we found that, the returning it electronically so that it arrives in time and will get counted is much more ballot friendly, voter friendly, than mailing it back and not having it arrive in time. There's a much greater risk of your ballot not being counted because you mailed it than because you sent it in electronically. Just finally wanted to say that every state has its quirks. Don't be surprised if you're reading an instruction that is completely different than what's in your state. And if something isn't clear, because they're not always that well written, ask for help. We are here to help you and not we don't want to throw you to the wolves. We want you to feel comfortable with the advice you're giving voters. Next one. So, ballot methods in returning. These are pretty unique to overseas voters because we are the only ones who have the option to return ballots electronically in some states. Like I said, it's about 33 states that will let us return ballots electronically. If you go to Vote From Abroad, the state voting rules page, it will tell you which ones they are. We also have that map that you can take at a quick glance which states those are. If a voter can return a ballot electronically, we highly encourage them to do so. Like I said, it's quick, it's cheap or free, and they can confirm that it was received almost immediately, and then they're done. They don't have to worry about postal disruptions. The problem with it is that there can be tech issues. People are not comfortable scanning their ballot and sending as a email attachment, for example. Especially, it's getting fewer and fewer. With fax, there are several states, including California and Florida, as 2 major states, that will accept the ballot by fax, but not by email. And we have a whole FAQ about how to send in what we call an e-fax. There's websites and apps where they will convert your email to a fax and send it in for you almost immediately. And again, you get immediate confirmation, it got in, if there's any problems. It's a great way to go if that's the only option available to you. A few states have online portals, which are awesome, but there's just not that very many. And it's a secure link where you have to sign in So there is that tech issue. And then you upload your ballot onto the portal and it goes directly to the Leo. Very quick and easy. And again, we very much encourage people to use electronic ballot return if it's available to them and know that their vote has been counted. Why is this not going to hear this? If they don't have electronic ballot return available or they don't want to use it, then they have to mail it back. Every state will accept a ballot by mail, obviously, but it's different when you're outside the US. You basically have three options. You can use your local postal system. That is very country specific. So hopefully you'll be helping voters in Spain and you'll know what the Spanish post is like, and how best to navigate the system. We really depend on the on the ground volunteers to give us that information. I'm in Canada. I have no idea how to mail something back from Spain. But there are countries where the postal system just doesn't exist or doesn't work very well. In that case, there are two options. The first one is using the US Embassy's diplomatic pouch. Some voters may be more comfortable with this, so maybe not so much lately. And in some countries, it can be the only dependable postal system. What it is you deliver your sealed ballot to the embassy, and they may have very strict restrictions on when and how you can do that, but they must accept it. They will put it in the diplomatic pouch and it will be mailed. It will go back to the US. Once it's in the US, it then is placed in US postal mail and gets mailed to your Leo. The problem with, so the good thing about it is it's just the cost of US postage, and you can actually use the US postage paid template, so it can be free. The problem is it is so slow. It takes at least 3 to 4 weeks for this process to happen, because you're dealing with when the diplomatic pouch goes out, where it goes to, then it gets put in the mail when it gets to the US and has to go through US mail. So most consulates and embassies will not accept a ballot after the beginning of October for, say, a November election. They want at least a month leeway. And even then, they don't guarantee it or get back in time. And then finally, it costs more than the other options, but using a courier private delivery like FedEx, UPS, DHL, may be the only way to make sure it gets back in time, particularly as you get closer to the deadline. It is expensive, but it's reliable. And we do have FAQs that talk about each of these different options. One thing to be aware with the couriers is do not ask for the office to sign for it. They won't. And they're usually too busy, and it could get kicked back to you if you ask for that. Also, couriers will not deliver to a PO box. So you'll have to make sure it's a street address, which you can get online. And the courier office will let you know that. One thing that does come up occasionally is if people want to use one courier envelope to send back several ballots. And that's actually okay, as long as you do it right. Each ballot needs to be separately sealed and its own little package. You kind of think of the courier envelope as like a mailbox. And then they all have to go to the same mailing address, to the same Leo. But it can save you a lot of money if 4 ballots from the same family all go in one courier envelope. Trickier is when you want someone to deliver a ballot for you. States have different rules on whether that's okay or not, if someone can touch your ballot, even though it's sealed. And we do have in the FAQs a link to a chart about what different states do. Most are fine for you to authorize someone to take your ballot for you and either put it in US mail or take it directly to the election office and put it in the drop box. But a couple are very much against that. Keep in mind that the ballot itself is still valid. It's the person touching your ballot who might be at risk. But it doesn't make the ballot bad. It's still a valid ballot, however it gets there. Again, read the instructions that come with the ballot as to how to return it, where it goes to, what your deadlines are, and make sure you follow them scrupulously. And if you have any questions when you're helping a voter, ask a more experienced volunteer to help you with it. And it may be that we need to even contact the election office and get them to clarify. Then the final step, some would say the most important step, is make sure you confirm that the Leo received the ballot. Every ballot must be counted, even though they may not start counting until later, but you need to make sure that they received it. And if there are any issues for them counting it, that you take care of it if possible. Now, one option, if there is a problem, that is a very good thing, major reason to use the FPCA form, is if you don't get your ballot back in time, you don't get your ballot sent to you in time for you to return it by the deadline, or if you're just worried that you might not get it in time, is you can send in what's called the backup ballot. We have a specific training on how to fill it out because it is its own form, but the backup ballot is also known as the FWAB, the Federal Write-in Absentee Ballot. We have an FAQ that you can read about what is the backup ballot and how do I use it, and it gives you instructions how to do it. The main rules are: send in an FPCA first. Make sure you've got UOCAVA protections. So double check that FPCA was sent in. Then you go to the website, which is fvap.gov, and follow the prompts to fill out the form. And then you send it in however the state requires. If the state allows you to return a ballot electronically, you can send in the backup ballot electronically. If it requires you to do a ballot witness signature, you'll have to get a witness signature for your backup ballot as well. All the same rules apply, but it's just an option for overseas voters to make sure they can get a ballot in by the deadline. Now, it's not voting twice. If you do actually get your regular ballot in time and want to send it in, they actually encourage you to do that as well. And what they say in the statute is if you send in a backup ballot and a regular ballot, they'll count whichever one arrives on time. And if they both arrive on time, then they will throw away the backup ballot and only count your regular ballot. But it is not considered double voting. It's allowed in the statute as a special option for us overseas voters because they know it can be hard to get ballots back in time. And particularly for military who, may be somewhere where they cannot get access to a ballot when they come out. So they'll send it in, months ahead of time. So that's it. Those are kind of the issues you see with people having trouble getting their ballots or need help with returning their ballots and how you help them do that. As I mentioned before, you're not expected to memorize this stuff. This is just raising the issues with you. So hopefully they'll tickle your brain when the time comes and you can know where to go to look for answers. We have the FAQs have standard responses to different situations. They give you a ton of information so you can help a voter who's, needs to use a backup ballot or who needs help mailing back their ballot, and to also, really listen to what the voters are saying and make sure you're getting the full facts from them, because they don't always understand what they need to know. And voting from abroad is just different from voting in the US, and it's very easy to get confused. So we help voters, like I said, on events on the ground in person. Those are a great way for people to get help. We also support them in the Zoom rooms, either drop in or we set up appointments so we can talk to them one-to-one. Those are great because you can actually look at their documents and look at what they've got and see where they might be going wrong. And we also have emails on the voter help desk where we help them by email as well. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop this training, stop sharing now, and see if you guys have any questions about this part of the training.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging in too. I know it's a long session. It's a lot of information.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
and Heidi, it's a lot of talking. So you haven't even grabbed a cough drop, a cup of coffee, or a glass of water. So if you want to do that, do it. But Dermot has 3 questions. I'm going to answer the last one first, because the question was, and it is a great question, are there voter registration drives planned for January 15th in Spain? And the answer is affirmatively and enthusiastically yes. Dermot, please sign up for our December Putting It All Together training, in which we will all talk about how we're going to do voter registration next year in 26, and most specifically about what we're going to do on January 15th. So for Heidi, first question from Dermot is, for ballot return by mail, is it the date that the mail was sent that counts for the deadline?
It depends. So some states have a received deadline only, typically election day. Other states will say it must be postmarked by election day, but you have additional time for us to receive it. It depends on the state. So again, look at the ballot instructions and also look on the Vote From Abroad state voting rules. It will tell you what those deadlines are.
Second question from Dermot. Do I need an email to fax service provider if my state does not accept email ballot return, but does accept faxed return? i.e.
Yes, so yeah, that's where I vote too. Yes, you can use the e-fax option to fax back to California, Florida, the other states that do fax only. They receive it as a fax.
And then another question I have from Christy, I miss where we find the confidentiality form. Is that something to do now or after our little quiz?
Either way, I can ask Annie and Helen to put that in the follow-up. I typically put that in the follow-up. It's something that DA volunteers do in general. So if you've already been like a phone banking volunteer, you already have one in the system. You just need to do it once. But it's our little way of making sure people are aware that, this is personal information you're looking at. You can't use it for your own purposes. And earlier is better, just to get it done.
Right. As Annie reminded, session 2 we talked about confidentiality forms, but we'll also make sure that we send it out when we send out this follow-up email from this session. And we will also put the links to the first 2 sessions and the slides from the first 2 sessions in that too. Annie already got there. Are there any other questions? Brett says, thanks for the refresher, Heidi. Any other questions before we let Heidi go and at least have a glass of water?
So I did want to point out, I forgot to mention that it'll hopefully be in the follow-up email that what we do to help volunteers give them support and stay up to speed is we have 2 Signal channels. One is Signal announcements, and that's where I will put things that come up, important information, anything that's changed, any changes we've made. Really important that every volunteer signs up for that so they at least get those announcements. We also have a Signal chat channel, which kind of up to you if you'd like to. It's a good place to ask questions, to read what other people are saying. It can be a bit messy, and I don't want people to feel that they have to read every post on the chat. If it's something important, some update, I will make sure it goes in the announcements channel. But it's a great place to ask questions and just see what people are talking about.
So,
And I was going to say, I can confirm that I'm not in the chat, but I am in the voter assistance announcement channel. And very often I then share immediately with my local group the updates, especially as we get closer to elections, because there are questions that come up. You know, local LEOs are saying something, and it's really, really helpful, Heidi. So thank you for keeping that running. I know you have a million things to do at one time. And it's really
Heidi,
helpful.
how does one join that Signal group? I'm already in it. Is it something that I can't remember how I got into it. Is it something that you join at the end of the test, or?
After a session, I usually send the link to people. And I will also send the link after people pass the quizzes, because I get a notification when they've passed the quizzes. So that it's just a link. Yeah.
Okay.
So we send it out.
Thanks.
And if people have any problems getting on, or don't get the link or whatever, just let me know and I'll send it to you.
Thank
Well,
you
thank
very
you
much.
guys so much for listening to all this information. It is a ton of information. Please don't feel that I'm expecting you to know everything I just said. It's more to let you know what's out there and where to go find answers.
Thank you, Heidi. Lots of thanks coming. I'm really proud of our folks here. We had 22 people hanging in till the end, and we had, I think, up to 35 at one point. So go Spain. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Good evening.
Bye.